She's not your average coach. She's a scientist of the human mind who helps leaders and couples rewire the way they think, lead, and love. With a PhD in clinical psychology and a career that's taken her from the TED stage to global boardrooms, she helps people transform cognitive science into real world strategies. Her clients don't just learn to perform better, they become unstoppable. Please welcome the powerhouse behind it all, Dr. Robin Buckley.
Hey AJ, good to see you.
Good to see you. Super excited for today.
Me too.
I was watching your TED Talk, and what a TED Talk, honestly. Like,
Well,
that
we're just
was
going to dive right in,
incredible.
AJ. Okay.
Sorry?
We're just going to dive right in.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna dive right in. That was incredible.
Thank
And
you.
the first line immediately grabs your attention. And, like, whoever watches it, it's like, whoa. And it definitely serves the purpose to, just wake up the person, like, what's going on. When I watched that TED Talk, to me, it was a wake up call to society that, we need to be more open about the topics that really impact everyone, especially women in that topic, in the sexual topic and things. If you don't talk about it, they're going to do something rash that may not be good. What was your original intention when you started scripting the TED Talk?
That's a great question. The TED Talk evolved just probably 3 years before. I said, someday I'd love to do a TEDx talk. We were on family vacation. I was talking to my son. It was before the situation with my daughter, the conversation with my daughter had happened. And I was just like, someday. And when the conversation with my daughter happened, it was something that as I said in the talk, I was not prepared for. I don't shy away from those conversations. I was raised by a mom who was a nurse, so we talked about everything at the dinner table. But it just came out of nowhere. And I think parents are prepared for a lot of different types of questions or needs to fill for their kids. And a sexual wellness device for my daughter was not on the agenda. But when I wrote the talk, I do love that it starts with such a controversial statement and an attention-grabbing statement. But it really, as you found, is so much more. It is about women, even young women, embracing who they are, what they want, how they want to live their lives. And honestly, it is probably one of the things I am most proud of in my life, is being able to weave together and not shy away from the controversy, but certainly use it as a launching pad for the conversations around why do we have different standards? Why are we embarrassed by this? Why can't women just own who they are in an authentic way?
Why? My guess is society. It's just societal conditioning.
Yeah, it is. It's society and culture, and the idea of having structure and keeping women kind of in their place works from a sense of, then everybody knows their roles. Nobody is going to be confused by it. Men have their place, women have their place. But it's so outdated. I mean, it's just so, it doesn't work in today's society. In fact, today I was just reading an article about how, was it Oracle, Comcast, and Spotify are now creating co-CEOs. They're changing the idea of how leading an organization works. And to me, marriage or very specific gender roles need to have that evolution too. Like, let's really look at, does that really work for us anymore? Is that who we are as a society anymore? Is that who we want to be as a society? So why can't we expand and start to rethink in a very genuine way how we look at people's places in society?
And something you really pointed out, that this is something I've thought about a long time. We upgrade our phones every 2 to 3 years. We upgrade our software, our devices, everything around us as frequently as possible. The one thing we don't upgrade is ourselves, which is actually the most critical part,
Right.
not the things around us. And
when you think about it, and I love that analogy, AJ, that, and we can expand it to the idea of businesses, which is a topic I'm really familiar with based on my book. But, Businesses sit down and they check in with their teams weekly, monthly, and then quarterly. Oh, and then you have your annual reviews as well. How often, to your point, do we do that with ourselves? Do we check in and
Right.
say, okay, what were the strengths from the week for me? What were the areas I want to improve? Basically, doing a SWOT analysis for
Right.
ourselves. Because, we know that we should. We know that there should be self reflection and that kind of mindful approach to our life. But my belief is that most people just keep going. We're busy. There's a lot to accomplish and there's a lot to do. And we don't do the upgrade I love that. Like we
Yeah.
don't stop to really say, how can we get optimum performance just like we expect from our technology?
Yeah. And I come from a country where majority is patriarchy, right? It's a very comfortable space. Everyone has their own place. But me and my wife have had this conversation for a while. I think it worked at a certain point, and then people became too afraid to change it.
Yeah.
People were uncomfortable because the setup at the time, and something we also discuss is each generation has its own battle, right? At the time when this was predominant, probably just survival was a predominant need. And a lot of cultures today have moved ahead. We are thriving a lot more than what it was back then. It was World War II period. There was incredible economic depression. Just bare survival and whatever is needed to get that going was the focus. But we are in a different time now. And the conversations are changing because we are in a different time. There's technology that's changing it. There's platforms where this conversation is happening. I am so curious, when you actually went out and spoke about this, how was the reception from the public?
Yeah, that's also a good question. It was really interesting. So it's one of the biggest TEDx stages in the country. So there was 1,000 people in this old historic theater, and I would say that the majority was really favorable. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go. My family was there. Both my daughters, who are referenced in the talk, were there. They were excited to be there. But there were definitely there were some people, a handful of people that walked out. There were people that, when I was done and there was a break, they were kind of giving me the side eye. One person actually went up to my younger daughter who was waiting in line in the bathroom, and she said, "Are you okay? Like, were you okay with your mom talking about that?" And my daughter's like, "Didn't you hear in her talk? She asked our permission and she asked us if we wanted to be," she's like, "Yeah, I'm good." And I was really proud of her that she was able to just not be embarrassed by that or not flinch when that came her way. And then of course online, I remember when my talk was released on the TEDx platform before TED moved it, and I'd been checking all day waiting to see it, and then it popped up, and my husband called me within seconds because he was checking too, and he said, "Do me a favor, when you get home, do not look at the comments." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Robin, don't look at the comments." I'm like, "Okay." So it took me about a half hour to get home from where I was. He was in a meeting. And of course, AJ, the first thing I did was jump on the comments. And some of them are breathtakingly offensive. But I did expect that. And doing the talk at the age, so that was 3 years ago, so I had just turned 50, I was able to take it. I was able to be like, when they said I'm a horrible mother, I'm like, yeah, I'm clear I'm not. And my daughters are clear I'm a good mom. I was able to roll with it in a way that when I was younger, I think it would have hurt me or made me question it. And I was just like, okay, move on. And then I go look for a positive comment. So it was mixed, but I would say that the majority was positive.
I'm glad it was positive because it's a hard topic to speak about. And, I respect the courage it took to go and speak about this. What I admired even more, and this was the symbol to me, when you ended the talk, you spoke about how your daughters felt about it and how they told their friends, "I can't believe your moms haven't given you a vibrator." And that to me was how secure they felt about it, how confident they felt in the relationship they had with you, which is the biggest badge, right?
Yeah.
If they are comfortable and secure enough to say, we own this, I think there's nothing better than that.
I agree. I think it's funny still that as my daughters have progressed out of high school and into college or into careers, it is so common for them to be like, yeah, Mom, so we sat around and I showed my new friends your talk. And I'm like, you just met these people. Do you want to like ease into it? And they're like, no, why? Like, that's just who we are. And I'm like, okay. I'm not embarrassed by it, but I'm like, I don't know if I would have been that brave in my early 20s to say, hey, my mom did this talk and we're in it. But yeah, they are. And they just continue to be young women that I really hope are a reflection of the next generation of women who are just like, no, that we're not going to accept what we're being told or told, we're being handed. We are going to challenge the status quo. We are going to challenge the quote unquote norms because it just doesn't work for us.
The other thing I wanted to highlight from that talk was the statistics you mentioned. And the reason I'm talking about the statistics, it could have been anything. The reason I'm talking about it is a lot of people, when they are held a mirror like this, they don't go back and look at what the data is talking about.
Yeah.
What really is happening behind the scene.
Right.
It's so uncomfortable to get out of our beliefs and social conditioning that we're scared to go look at the data. And the data is pretty clear. Like, most teenagers are going to explore porn.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is, to anyone listening to this, no matter how uncomfortable you are, try looking at what the data says. Now, sometimes the data may not reflect what the truth is. Mm-hmm. That's a rare case, but dig into it. See what's going on.
Yeah.
Because that will truly help evolve into a parent that your teenagers need rather than the parent you want to be.
Yeah, it's the statistics, even when I was looking them up to add to the talk, they really made me catch my breath. Like how the percentage of kids that by the time they're out of middle school and high school have been exposed to porn. And pornography has evolved from, when I was younger and, the original Playboy model where it's just naked pictures. I mean, there are things that can really shape children's future preferences and sexual interests because they're looking at it so young and without the cognitive development to be able to really say, okay, that's over the top or that's not real. And now all of a sudden that becomes their platform where they're growing from. And it's so, as you said, AJ, it's so important. It doesn't matter if you're uncomfortable. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. Just listen to your kids. Let it be a space where they can come and ask questions and not be judged. And over, and you heard it in the talk, because if they're not coming to you, they're going somewhere else. And that isn't necessarily a trustworthy source.
And, something I've heard from some parents is, you'll understand when you grow up. But the truth is that you need to meet them where they are now.
Yeah.
It's not about what will happen in the future.
Right.
Meet them where they are now. And you may be in the right. It's not that the parents are wrong.
No.
But if you cannot help them feel understood and seen, because they have a perspective that you're not able to see.
Right.
And from my experience, when people don't feel seen and heard, they rarely take your advice. They're not going to take your advice.
Right. It is amazing. And again, not that I've done things perfectly. I am far from a perfect person and parent. But what I do love that talk certainly is a reflection of is that my kids to this day, my sons and my daughters, still come to us, still talk about things that are so personal. I mean, good Lord, my older daughter has a newish boyfriend. I mean, they've been together a year and now they're living together. But he hasn't been around us very often. And they lived with us for 2 months this past summer as they were transitioning to their new state. And some of the things she would bring up in front of him about their personal life, and the look on his face was horrified. But I'm like, she'd be like, Mom, what do you think about this? And I'd look at her boyfriend and I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to get used to this. This is our family. I said, but Maddie, you might want to ask him if he's okay with this. And he's like, if this is how it is, I'm going to learn. I'm like, okay. But I love that they're comfortable enough to just know that sex and sexuality is as open of a conversation as, do you like this outfit on me? It's all part of their identity. So why would it be something we would shy away from? And I do appreciate that about them.
You just pointed to a topic. This wasn't in my plan of conversation, but I'm so curious about. When your kids grow up, they have grown up in a certain household, and then they get together with someone who may not have had the same experiences,
Mhm.
and very likely they've grown up in a very different environment.
Mhm.
How do you recommend they bridge this? Because, like, if I take your example, your kids grew up in a very open space where they were just honest about what they felt, what's going on, and that's amazing. But someone outside may not be able to get this because they may have grown up in a place
Right.
where things are really taboo, they don't know how to take it. How do you recommend young couples, or at any point, how do they bridge this gap?
Yeah, actually, that goes back to a strategy that I talk about in my book, AJ. That couples, my belief is that it's important for couples to set up SOPs, standard operating procedures. So when the two, my daughter and her boyfriend, were moving in with us, I mean, it was easy for us to do the SOPs around what does it look like for you to be part of this house, like keep up, don't no personal stuff in common areas, clean up your own bathroom, those are easy. But for couples, it is important for it to extend to things like communication. And when we go to your parents' house, what does communication look like? If I get uncomfortable, what's our cue or our sign? Are there topics that are just off limits? Obviously, my daughter did not do that when they were when she brought up the conversation in front of me. But it is really important because, again, if we were in business and we were going into a meeting, we would plan our script, we would plan what we're going to talk about, what was off the
Right.
table, what we want to avoid. We do that intuitively because we want the meeting or the presentation to go well. But in our personal lives, we just wing it. And
Yeah.
it's unfathomable to me because then it sets the couple up for potential disaster. Maybe that's a little extreme. And it also sets up the external stakeholders because now they're like, what's going on? Like, is this an okay topic? So when couples sit down and say ahead of time, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? If your mother brings this up for the 20th time, how are we going to handle it? Who's going to take the lead on, bringing that conversation to a close? It goes so much smoother. So, yeah, I'm going to need to readdress that one with my daughter. So,
The reason I'm really curious about this is I have worked with some people and they feel like a part of their identity needs to be changed now. They grew up with something, they value something a lot. So, for example, they value openness. And now there's this transition where your partner isn't as comfortable. So, I'm not able to do something I really value. Is there a different perspective they should take as you're trying to get into this space now?
yeah, that's a great question, AJ. For me, it is understanding what strengths each person brings into a relationship and how those strengths can facilitate the growth of that relationship. So it is not negotiating to the point where you've lost all of yourself. It's okay, in this situation, who will take the lead? Not who's the boss, but who's going to drive the interaction because of a certain skill set. So certainly, and I'll keep picking on my daughter and her boyfriend, but certainly if it was a household that was very extroverted or a situation that was very extroverted and open, my daughter would be taking the lead because she fits both of those characteristics. Her boyfriend is a complete introvert. So in more reflective moments or with people who are more quiet, reserved, then he should take the lead. So it's not that he needs to change or she needs to change. It's when, the beauty is they have both sides. And when can each of those strengths really be valuable depending on the situation? So it's negotiating that. It comes back to those check-ins and that communication of how are we going to do this instead of just blindly going in and hoping it works out. We would never
Yeah.
do that in business.
Yeah, and just as you were speaking, I was thinking about this. And what comes up for me is it's not that they're losing their identity. It's actually they're creating a new identity. It's like they're constructing a new place that's just for the couple themselves. They get to own the space and it's constructed by both of them. And to me, at least, that metaphor seems to answer the question, but it's each person's
Yeah.
perspective.
I would want to make sure, using your example, that each person is not adjusting their identity. They're finding a way to make both identities work together.
Right. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. That's the crucial part.
yeah, I would never encourage someone to change or become, we always hear, well, you live with someone for not long enough, you become like them.
Yeah.
And I don't buy into that. I think that, yeah, we pick up, one softens one toughens the others, that kind of thing, but not to the point where you've lost your essential self. And maybe it just comes down to those core values rather than, oh yeah, some of your behaviors change, but that core sense of who you are stays intact.
Okay. I think this is a great space for me to kind of switch into a question that I
Sure.
found online. So I actually found two questions for you. One was on the relationship side and one was on the team and culture side.
Okay.
Right? So here's the first one. I'm having thoughts that my wife isn't interested in me anymore and have never felt more alone. This is the title. So here's what this person says. I don't normally do this, and I think I already know the answer. I'm in a situation where I have been married for over 10 years, and ever since my wife started visiting an old friend of hers that is in prison, she has been argumentative and everything turns into a fight, especially when it's anywhere close to the morning. Now we sleep in separate rooms, to which I stated years and years ago, please don't treat me like a roommate. I probably should not say anything, but it's killing me inside. Yes, I have my own issues. I'm not perfect, but this just seems to be getting worse. I don't want a divorce, God no, but I don't know where this is going. Part of me just wants to take off for like a week or two and not answer my phone, not have any communication. I have never cheated on a woman in my life, and I won't ever. As I said, I have had my own issues. I deal with them every day. It's to the point I don't want to mention anything. I just find it odd that after her first visit to the facility, she has told me for the past couple years she has been miserable. I've always said, if something is wrong, please tell me. But I never, not once, heard her speak up about these issues now. Of course, she will turn around and say otherwise, and my memory isn't the greatest, but some things, they just don't disappear from memory. With every visit, she gets colder, and we get into arguments. I really don't want to lose this woman, but I almost feel like I don't know this person anymore.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. So if this was a client, because my clients are sometimes I work with them as individuals, and a lot of times I work with them as couples. And so if this person was coming into a session and sharing that either in front of his significant other or not, I mean, my first question would be, do you both want to stay in this relationship? Obviously, he has said he does, but I'd want to hear from his partner whether she does, and explore that a little bit. And there's two strategies that I would recommend to happen within that right after the first session. The first one is if they both said, yeah, we want to see if we can make this work. We do want to be together. The first one would be to have them write a mission statement. So actually sitting down to craft what is the mission and vision statement for their relationship. Companies do this all the time to make sure people stay aligned, to make sure they are, set on the same, forward-moving goal. But couples don't usually do this, and especially couples who are struggling, it helps to bring them back to, again, their core values as a couple and keep them unified. The other step that I would strongly recommend for them is to start setting up really clear check-ins. So again, businesses do this all the time. My recommendation is for couples to have a 5-minute check-in every day, a 20-minute check-in every week, a 1-hour check-in every month, and then an annual retreat. Now that could be 8 hours or it could be a full weekend, either way. But we're using that business structure because of what the benefits are in business. It keeps people united. It doesn't let problems just keep getting pushed down the road. it gives you that connection to your partner, so you know what's going on in their head. So instead of waiting whatever it's been, months or years, with his female partner making these visits and getting colder, it's right. You went to visit your friend, last week, and all of a sudden there seems to be a shift. Let's talk about that. Let's catch up on that. If we can't do it in 5 minutes, then let's wait till our weekly meeting. If we need more time, then let's make sure that we table it for our monthly meeting. But I'd like to check in and see where we're at. So you're not just kicking the can down the road. You're really making sure that those check-ins provide you data in as real time as possible, so that things don't get worse and don't, metastasize the relationship.
What do you do when, let's say, this person has tried communicating that there's been a shift and they are in complete denial? They have no idea that there's a massive shift in behavior happening. They're completely in denial. What do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this comes up, I can't even tell you how frequently. And the template that typically comes up, it's in a heterosexual relationship. And it's typically the male partner who is absolutely clueless, has no clue that things are as bad as they are. I see it a lot, particularly in couples who have been married for a while, and the woman has hit, her 40s or 50s. Kids are out or almost out of the house, and all of a sudden she's like, okay, what do I want now? What do I want next? And that's when she might ask for things to change. She doesn't want to cook dinner every night. She doesn't want to cook at all. And
Right.
the husband's like, wait a minute, we've been doing this forever. Like, why is this shifting? Or, it's all of a sudden, I want to now work 14-hour days because I love my job. And he's like, wait, we usually curl up on the couch and watch TV. Her wants have changed, and she's articulating them. And I hear this a lot from the men in these situations. They feel like the rug's been pulled out from under them. They're like, what do you mean you've been miserable? What do you mean you're unhappy? She's like, I've been telling you that. And I really do believe that these are not insensitive men, the majority. Of course, there's exceptions, but they're not insensitive. They're not, it's not that they don't love their wife. They just get really comfortable. And they like the way things have been going fine. So why are we messing it up? And the woman's like, because I'm done with the way it's been. So when that happens, it really does come down to negotiation, just like in business. Are we willing to negotiate to figure out how we can achieve your goals as an individual, my goals as an individual, and then our shared goals as a couple? How can we do this? And I think there's a lot of creativity and some really wonderful conversations that can come out of that if both parties are willing to have the conversations. Because I've seen both men and women just hunker down and say, nope, this is how I want it, and there's no flexibility, and that's going to be a problem.
What have you observed that has helped someone who's just, hunkered down, and this is how it is, move into a place of, okay, I see what you're saying, I'm willing to shift? What takes them across that bridge?
Yeah, it's almost like when I talk to people about time management and getting huge projects done. You're not trying to, in those scenarios, you're not trying to change everything all at once. Maybe we just look at what are your top 3 things that you really would like to change in the relationship, whatever it might be. And let's start with one of those. How, the one I just mentioned, which is usually pretty simple, is, the cooking structure. How can we make that work? How can we change that? And let's do that for a couple weeks. See how the schedule works, see if there needs to be any tweaks, and then let's look at the next thing. What's the next thing that one or both of you, want to look at? And so you take it piece by piece rather than this radical, the entire, all the aspects of the relationship change, which again, in business, you very rarely just take everything apart and build from the ground. I mean, that happens, but usually it's based on some kind of trauma in the business. So it's, well, let's tweak over here and see how that goes, and then let's adjust over here and see how that goes. And I have seen couples that has seemed to work really well when I've done that with couples, where they just take one piece and they find that negotiation middle, and then they experiment with it. And if it works, great. Now we can move on to the second. If it doesn't work, where else do we need to tweak it? And so they rebuild their relationship, but in a brick by brick fashion rather than just leveling the whole thing to start from the ground up.
I wanted to shift into something you mentioned to me during the in the jot form, which is that you yourself went through divorces.
Yep.
When you look back on that, I know a lot of what you're talking about is already based on that, but what was your highlight that ah, th- I need to learn from them, or something I've missed here and I need to take this forward? Was there something that stood out?
The biggest thing when I look at both of my past marriages, it really, as simplistic as it sounds, I had no plan. I knew I loved both these men, how I defined love at that point in time in my life. But there was no plan. We didn't talk about finances ahead of time. We didn't talk about parenting styles. We didn't talk about really anything other than we just loved being together, and we had a general idea of where we wanted our marriage to go, but no specifics. It really was just diving in without being able to take a look around. Where are we going? It is absolutely unimaginable to me that that's how I approached it, but that is how most people do it. They love each other, there's a sexual attraction, there's similarities, but when you get into a shared life, there's so many details that would be important to discuss. And I joke with people, I'm like, people spend $250,000 to $300,000 on weddings. And at least that was the last statistic I found in America, and upwards of hundreds of hours to plan their weddings. And what I usually will joke around and say is, how much time and hours did you put into planning your actual marriage?
Right.
And of course, people are like, well, yeah, weird. I'm like, no, you had the details of your wedding down to the flower color.
Yeah.
Where is that for your marriage? And we just don't do that. We don't teach people to do that for their futures. My kids are appalled. The daughters are from one husband, and the younger one just asked me a couple weeks ago. She's like, "Mom, how long did you know Dad before you got married?" I'm like, "A year." She's like, "A year you were engaged?" I'm like, "No, we started dating and got married in a year." She's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, I hear you. She's like, "That is not the answer I thought you were going to say." I'm like, yep, me neither. So learn from me.
It's crazy how much people take it very reactively.
Yeah.
And even through reaction, you were mentioning a lot of people are clueless. In my experience, the hints are really there. So, for example, earlier in my relationship, what was happening was my wife used to say that we were doing long distance, right? So we were miles apart, and she used to say, we're not spending time together. Those were the words she would say. But in my mind, we're sitting together and speaking for hours. I don't know how much more time I can give in. And then we started digging. I had the grace one day to ask her, what does spending more time mean to you?
Yeah.
Right? And then she said, oh, we don't laugh enough. We don't have enough fun. And then I was like, okay, you have a completely different definition.
Yes.
And that day I realized that the words people use and what they actually mean may not be the exact same thing.
Right.
It may mean something else to you.
Right.
So dig in. What does it mean to the other person?
When I talk to people in general, I'm like, how do you operationalize that? Some guy on TikTok, after one of my posts, he had said something about that. They already do this because they have love and awareness, and there was something else. And I said, okay, but how do you define love? How are you going to measure to see if there's any fluctuations? How do you define awareness? Like, what does that mean? We use these vague terms, AJ, and It's like, what does that really mean? Your example is a great one. What your wife was saying, I mean, you understood the term from the general perspective, but not from her specific definition of it. And that is so important.
And here's the twist. I actually thought I understood it And I again, a few years later, she was like, we're not having enough fun. And I dug in even further. What would fun look like to you?
Yeah.
And then there was a sub-definition to it. And the more you dig into it, the more you understand what this person's
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
And with experience, what I've realized is we all have this hidden language of speaking to ourselves. And no one else is going to understand it. And that's why, from my perspective, when people say they don't have motivation to do something or they don't feel like doing something, they're speaking to themselves in a way that's not congruent with what their mind perceives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that to be so fascinating in my journey.
Well, good for you. I mean, I applaud you and your wife for pushing through the conversation, having the next conversation, really trying to get to the essence of what, in this case, she was asking for. Because what some couples will do is just get frustrated and be done and be like, fine, I can never make her happy. Instead of, okay, no, tell me more. To explain more, help me understand, because I obviously still don't quite get it. That to me is one of the key characteristics between a relationship that's going to work and a relationship that is not, is the willingness to have the conversations, and more importantly, the uncomfortable conversations, to really get to what the meaning is.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, I'll pose this question. This is on team and culture, and then I wanted to understand more about what you're observing in today's companies and organizations and what's shifting. So here's the question. An intern completed a task assigned to a full-time employee because of leaderboard competition. What's the best way to handle this? So here are the details. I'm a team lead, and recently our CEO introduced a leaderboard to track completed tasks. Yesterday, I assigned a documentation task to a full-time employee with a deadline. At 3 a.m., an intern messaged me saying he had taken the initiative and already completed it. He went on and assigned the task to themselves on the system and then informed the full-time employee about it. Now the full-timer is left out and frustrated. He told me he felt the task was sniped. The intern has the points under his name on the system now. How should I handle ownership of tasks and recognition here? Should the credit go to the assigned person, the intern, or what?
Yeah, that's a very specific situation. So, if I was coaching this team, one of the first things I'd recommend is to get everybody in the room, all the players in the room, and have them have a conversation about how this happened. Where was the miscommunication, and where were the assumptions, and how, for the people who made assumptions, how do the assumptions support or detract from the mission of the team, the mission of the organization? Was this a decision that was good for all, or was this a decision that was good for one? And does that really match up with the intent of again, the project, the team, or the organization? So it's opening up the lines of communication, not relying on Slack, not relying on, it would either, if they're remote, then it would be a Zoom meeting so we can see each other's faces. And if they're ideally in person, then it's in the same room to have the conversation. Because it's important to understand the why. Why did that happen? What was the thinking? How did we let that not be clear of how this is organized or how we're going to use the leaderboard? So before there's any reaction, before there's any assumptions about what the intern's like or what the full-time employee is like, it's a lot of questions first. And then approaching it from the team perspective or the team terminology of how can we make this different in the future? What are the steps we can take so that this doesn't happen again? How can we make sure we stay aligned? So it's using, again, very similar to in relationships. It is asking the questions and then coming up with a solution from a team perspective of how we can work together to learn from this and then change the future.
What I'm super curious about, this brought up a very interesting question in my mind. They used competition to kind of improve performance. Like they were trying to use competition to build performance. Have you observed competition as something that kind of works against team culture? It's a mix, anything can happen, and is there a right way to do it?
I have seen it do both. I have seen some organizations structure competition in a way that really makes productivity boost and really motivates the environment. And I have seen the exact opposite, where it has destroyed morale and really ruined projects. And when I've analyzed the differences, one of the essential, if not the essential thing, is it's the culture. You have to understand the culture first in order to determine whether competition makes sense or not.
Right.
If it's a culture where people support each other and cheer each other's wins, and where you're not creating big big rewards. So, I mean, one of the companies I worked with, for their leaderboard, the teams could earn up to, I think it was a crazy, it was like $10,000 to be divided among the team if they won. That's a lot. I mean, then each team was about 3 people. That's a lot of money to be hanging over people's heads. That's going to create bitterness. But if it's, you know what, you get to go home a half day early on a Friday, that's still nice and wonderful, but it's not enough to create that sense of jealousy and anger. So knowing the culture, understanding that the rewards have to fit with your ultimate goal of, I want to keep everybody connected and morale boosted. I think one of the ways I saw it done best was one of the team that did they got I think they actually got a full Friday off, was the enticement. But at the same time, whoever was in the office, they catered lunch. So everybody won. I mean, and I'm not talking about like a participation award, but it was like, okay, one team gets a whole day off. That's amazing. And yeah, the rest of us, we appreciated the work you did that contributed to that. And I thought that was a really lovely way to use competition in a way that was going to enhance the culture rather than undermine it.
Fascinating. So, if I understand it right, what you're saying is culture or rather competition works depending on the foundation you have set.
Yes.
If the foundation is right, competition will help enhance whatever goals you want to get to.
Right.
The competition itself will work depending on what's there. It's not something that will create the culture, but if there is no culture, then it'll show you what the culture is.
Right. And I think too many people use it just thinking, oh, that'll be fun. And it's like, will it? Will it be fun? Do you know your employees? Do you know the culture you created? Really think that through.
Awesome. So I know you've worked with different organizations now, right? From Nike to various kinds. Do you see any trends that are happening in the way companies are building culture now? And what's your perspective on that?
Right now in America, it's a little tricky. It seems that there is a lot going on, and companies, at least the companies I've worked with or been connected to, they're still trying to figure out how to keep their stakeholders happy, how to keep their boards happy, how to keep their employees happy, and how to keep their customers happy. And that is when I talk to leaders, that is one of the biggest challenges they have right now, because in at least in the United States, there's a lot of variables to track. There's politics, there is quote unquote woke culture, there's diversity, there's certainly male and female is still on the table. There's just a lot that is being questioned and argued and held as kind of the lines in the sand, and it's making it difficult for companies and leaders to really figure out what their culture is going to be. Now, with that said, there are some companies that are absolutely like just hunkering down with what they believe in. Patagonia is a great example of that. They're like, nope, this is who we are. This is who we're going to be. Costco's another one, which I honestly can't believe, because Costco is a hugely profitable organization. And for them to say, nope, this is our values, this is the way we've always stayed. And I appreciate that. I think that's amazing. I think they have it easy in that sense, because they're just like, nope, this is who we are, this is what we're going to stay with. But it is a risk, I mean, in this day and age. So, how they do it has been, it's fascinating to watch. I'm glad I'm not in those organizations to try and figure it out. I'm happy to go in and help them, but it is fascinating, and it does take a lot of conversation of what is your end goal. and it might not be possible to make all of those groups of people happy at the same time. So which is the group we're going to focus on to make happy? And how is that going to contribute to the sustainability of the organization? Because if you choose incorrectly, then your organization might not survive.
How do you recommend they think about these decisions that they have to make? Because it's such a hard spot.
Yeah. Well, for leaders, it certainly is an emphasis on making sure that they are surrounded by really diverse thinkers. And I don't mean diverse thinkers like they think outside the box, although that's lovely too. It's people who don't think like them. Make sure you don't just have yes men around, yes people around you. Make sure that you have people with different perspectives, different ideas, different beliefs, because that's what will keep the conversation as fact-based as possible, because you're going to be pulling in these different ideas. So that's always where we start, is who's on your team, as a leader, who's surrounding you, and do they come from different backgrounds? Because if they don't, then you're just going to do things the way you've always done it, and that is not going to be valuable, and it might not get you to where you really want to be.
I was watching a clip recently, and this was of Jeff Bezos. He was mentioning that one of his direct reports, at the time they were growing, this is what he came and told him. You are creating so many ideas that it will drive Amazon down to failure. And the reason I bring this up is for a company that's growing and for someone who's starting to do really well, to go back, to be able to take that feedback, the path that we probably might be going on could lead us to failure, is challenging, but that's exactly what you need. And I'm just reflecting on what you said, like you need people who will come and tell you, this may be a path that is going to cause problems for us.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at some of the most successful politicians, some of the most successful business leaders, some of the most successful committed relationships, they do incorporate that idea of having people, whether it's your significant other or your board, who are going to say, do we really want to do that? Let's rethink that. In psychology, we know this concept. It's groupthink. Everybody's saying, yay, yeah, that's a great idea. And then you're not seeing the big obstacle that's right in front of you. So having the ability to talk, I actually encourage leaders, look for someone to be on your team that meets all the criteria, of course, in terms of what you're looking for in skills or education. But pick someone, at least one person, or actually I say two people on your team, that is 100% opposite you. Different, has a different perspective, gives you the 180. Because 360 reviews are great, but maybe you just want a 180 review, which is the exact opposite of where you're coming from. So that's been interesting. Not all leaders buy into that. They're like, Robin, that's not going to happen. I'm like, that's your choice, but it will absolutely guarantee that you have at least a couple people on your team who are like, I'm not sure about that. Let's look at it a different way, and that's what might get you to that next product or next movement that's really going to create some expansion.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to me, because you need someone like that. You need someone who will say, okay, I see how this is all going to work, but I also see, okay, this is where it's all going to break down. And you need someone like that who has that perspective. You need people who can work with the flow and against the flow. How do you prepare a team like that? Because if you don't coordinate this the right way, it can feed each other in the wrong way. So, for example, if you have some reports who are like, this is going to work, this is what we are thinking, but someone else keeps coming and saying, no, this is the issue, this is what's going to go wrong. How do you facilitate that? Because you want the person coming in to do this role to be reinforced for what they're doing and help the team know, okay, this is what we will expect.
Yeah. AJ, when you were in school, did you ever have to do a debate? Like an English class or something?
There were debates, but I wasn't great at it.
Okay. Well, when you think about a traditional debate, especially when people are first learning debate, sometimes you have to take a perspective that you don't like. You have to argue the side that is not aligned with what you really believe, because it's good to practice, again, that alternate way of thinking. And businesses can do the same thing, where they actually assign the role. So even if they don't have people who are really 180 opposite the leader, what I've encouraged and seen businesses do is that, so we have an ideation team, and we're going to come up with some ideas. We're going to present these ideas, but then they take a percentage of their ideation team and they say, now you're going to look for all the problems with this. You're going to look for all the obstacles. You're going to come up with all the worst case scenarios. So even if, they're part of the team, they helped come up with the idea, but now they're going to come up with the antithesis of the idea, basically. So when people are assigned those roles, then they know that's their job. Their job is to be the nudge, to be the devil's advocate, to bring in the additional data that is not aligned with the original idea. And everybody on the team knows that. It's not that he's being a jerk or she's trying to be difficult. It's, oh, no, that was their job. So when there's titles involved or roles involved, it's not a personal thing. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. Okay.
So it works really well that way, because it's just like, and everybody takes turns being in those opposites roles. So it's not always the same four people who are playing devil's advocate. It's, well, now it's your turn, but on this other project, it's going to be a different group of people.
Okay. Awesome. I think, I guess it's the time for me to switch formats a little bit more. And in this game that I'm going to have, this is where we look at what your stories, right? So I'll give you a few prompts, like the first time you did XYZ, and you tell us what happened and what you learned from that journey.
Fun. Okay.
So here's the first one. The first time you realized that there is nothing shameful talking openly about sex.
That would be when I was a little girl. We were driving to school. My mom was driving my sister and I to school, and my sister, who was probably 6 at the time, asked what a vagina was. And my mom, without a beat, explained what a vagina was on our 15-minute drive to school. And that was the first time when I was like, and even more specifically, that's also how I learned about sex. It was on a drive to school with my mom. Now, obviously, she kept it age appropriate. She answered the question. My mom never said, you're too young to know. It was an age appropriate response, but she always gave us an answer. So yeah, at elementary school. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Have you found that answering the question is better than saying you're not ready for this yet?
100%, AJ. Oh my gosh. You are not ready or you are too young is never the answer. Never, ever, ever, ever for anything. I will tell that ad nauseum to people and parents especially. It is always deciding what is the best way. And I'm going to be really candid. My mom did the same thing when I think probably my sister, because she was always more self-aware than I, but my sister asked about what a period was, what a menstrual cycle was. She said period. And my mom, she was little, really little. And my mom didn't explain it in its full glory because that would have been scary. Like to think about, when you're a little girl, like blood coming out of you, what does that mean? Because up until that time, if blood's coming out of you, you're hurt.
Yeah.
So my mom just said, there's a little bit of liquid that just comes out of you, just like when you go to the bathroom, and then that's it. And then as we got older, she would add the information. So it was never, we're too young. It's just, we're going to tell you a little bit. And we got the answer. We were like, oh, okay. And that was it. We didn't fight it. We didn't try and go look for it anywhere else because we had enough information for
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least my guess is when you say you're not ready for it, it just builds more curiosity.
Yes,
and
of course it does.
There's this open loop in our brains. Okay, what is it actually? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, the next one. The first time you used a cognitive behavioral strategy on yourself and it actually worked.
That was probably after my first divorce. Sadly, I might have before that, but I didn't actually process and recognize it because I was the first person in my entire family, including extended family, to get divorced. No one else had, and I have a lot of cousins. And so I very much felt like the black sheep or that something I just was wrong. And I do remember sitting on the couch and saying, what why would I, talking back to my amygdala, like, why would I feel that way? This didn't work for me. This wasn't the right match. This was a complete misalignment in values. So why would it be something I'm blaming myself for? So I remember having, instead of letting just that one part of my brain have this monologue, I kicked in my prefrontal cortex and said, no. There's another way to look at this, and let's consider this reframe. So.
Wow, that's awesome. The first time a client's transformation made you emotional.
Oh my God, there's been a lot of those. Very first time. It was actually, oh my gosh. If I go really, so he wasn't technically a client. I was an intern in college.
Uh-huh.
I was debating whether I should switch from psychology to social work, and I was working with homeless kids on the streets. And there was a 15-year-old boy who was homeless and fit every stereotype, tough and cynical. And I just wanted to get through to him. I just did. And so I worked with him over that entire year, and I would, just do all the things to build his trust. And when I graduated, we had stayed in touch and worked together all that year. When I graduated, he had found a job. He was finishing high school.
Wow.
And when I went to say goodbye to him at his job, he got teary-eyed, and I'd only seen tears in his eyes one other time when his grandmother died. And he said, I'm where I am because of you. And that was crazy. And then I actually heard from him 4 years later. After that, he wrote me a letter telling me he had finished high school, he got a job with the U.S. Postal Service, he had a serious girlfriend, and that it was because of me and me being there and showing up for him that he got to where he was. And that, I have goosebumps even thinking about it now. Not technically a client, but certainly my first foray into that.
Yeah, it may give me goosebumps listening to it. That's beautiful.
Cool.
The first time you felt free enough to talk about taboo topics with your daughter.
About the same as my mom. Really. As early as they could ask questions, my mom was a great role model in that. I answered appropriately. And luckily, their dad does not have that philosophy, their stepdad does. He is very comfortable if questions are asked in front of him or to him. He gives male perspectives to them. I think that's something they really appreciate about him, and certainly us as a team. I can't give you, but definitely as early as they could talk and ask questions.
Okay. The first time you applied your coaching tools inside your own relationship.
I wish it had been sooner than it was. Knowing that my husband went through the same graduate program, so we learned the same way, and we're both coaches now. I can't tell you the first time, AJ, but I do know the one that I consistently go back to as being weirdly surprised. My husband, we had two of my closest friends here. He was not feeling well, so not an excuse, and he said something that was so controlling to me, which is not a dynamic in our relationship. And I just let it go. He went off to bed. My friends were appalled and pulled me aside, and we had to have this long conversation. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was so embarrassed and so hurt. And they were even like, is things good with the two of you? They had both come out of divorces, so of course their lenses were skewed. And after they left, I remember thinking, there are two ways this can go. I can react and be angry and hurt and have all that come out, or I can go read my damn book. And I read part of my book, and I remembered what I suggest to clients in terms of how to orchestrate these kind of conversations. And so I said to him that day, I was super quiet that day, I could barely look him in the eye. And he said, okay, what's going on? I said, I don't want to talk about it now. I would like to set up an emergency relationship meeting tomorrow, which is usually every month for us. And he said, okay. And he didn't push. And we waited till the next day, and I came in with an agenda, like I suggest to my clients, with questions. What was the intent of how you said that? What was your goal? And why would you, what were you trying to accomplish? How can we do this differently in the future? So it was based on questions rather than accusations. And it worked so well. And I remember thinking, of course it worked well. All your clients do this. They tell you it works well. But to actually, it was a really emotional, and we don't have those kind of things. So to use it in that kind of situation, I was like, cool, this works.
Nice. The first time you felt your tools failing you.
Oh, AJ, you keep saying the first time, but I'm not giving you the first times. Most recently?
Earliest time, it doesn't have to be the first. Earliest time you
Okay.
can remember.
How about most powerful? Let's go with most powerful. The most powerful time that my tools failed me was when my mom died. So she died 2 years ago, and I was in a very deep state of grief for at least 8 months. And not only didn't the tools help, I didn't even try to make them work. I was just sad, and I just didn't even want to feel any differently, which of course then affected a lot of how I not acted or behaved, but like my motivation was gone, my drive was gone. I was able to work with clients, but that's where all my energy went into, just to be able to maintain clients and do my best for them. But yeah, my strategies were not working, and I again had to apply some advice that I give to clients, which is sometimes the strategies aren't going to work and you need something more. In my case, I needed to go back to therapy, and I couldn't help myself, and I needed to take some antidepressants to just get over the cusp so that the therapy worked. And then again, miraculously, of course it did. It did exactly what I was hoping it would do. So yeah.
Grief has a way of getting under our skin like nothing else
Like
can.
nothing else. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I unexpectedly lost my dad a few years ago, and
You know,
that it took a long time for me to
it
get
does.
out from it.
It does.
It felt like my internal world was just shattered. It
Yeah.
was like everything I felt inside was just gone.
I mean, people,
And it,
you know rationally you're going to lose
yes,
your parent and it's going to hurt. Nope, did not know it was going to hurt like that. That was a pain like I've never experienced. So, yeah, I
I
get
was
it.
feeling things I couldn't process.
Yeah,
I was like, why am I feeling this way?
yeah,
And I was in questioning, what's wrong with me? What's going on? And
right.
it just takes you into a different spiral.
Yep, agreed. I hear you.
Yeah. The first time you felt true love.
It was with my first husband. I mean, we dated the last 2 years of college. He was a year ahead of me. I think that's where the struggle about when he proposed, I knew it was coming. And when he actually popped the question, everything in me said, do not say yes. That was the first time my intuition was so loud. It was no doubt. But my emotional part of my brain said, but we've been together and I love him. And I did love him. But something in me knew it wasn't a right match. That love was not enough. And I didn't listen to that part of so yeah, it was him. It was the first time I felt recognized and seen and connected to. So I don't regret marrying him. I regret not listening to my intuition, but I learned a lot from that.
Okay. Switching gears into career a bit. The first time you felt lit up by your cognitive behavioral strategies.
The first time I saw a client doing it on her own in the session. So we're
Oh, nice.
talking, we're working, and all of a sudden, and I can't even remember the exact conversation, but I saw her applying that. I just sat back and I let her do it right in front of me, and it was so cool because she looked up at me and she's like, I guess I've been listening to you. And I'm like, I guess so. It was great. I mean, she was using the same words, everything, and not in a just robotic way. She was doing it, and that was amazing to watch.
Awesome. The first time you walked into a room full of executives and thought, I belong here.
Yeah, that was probably maybe 5 years ago. I wish it was longer, but 5 years ago, where I walked in and I was so excited to work with them, and there was no doubt or why am I here? No imposter syndrome. It was just like, I know stuff you don't know. You know a lot of stuff I don't know. But yeah, it was walking in and it was a very male dominated room. And I went to the front of the room like I owned it, and it was just, let's go. It was cool. Yeah, it was fun.
That's nice.
It was nice.
Was there anything that shifted in you that to help you feel that way? Like during the journey that kind of added on to help
I
you
did,
feel that way?
I did a lot of the strategies that I tell my clients to do, all the way up in the very long elevator ride, right up to close to the top floor. I did as many strategies as I could access, and just remembered that I had a wealth of information they had no knowledge of. They don't have they didn't have a background in psychology. They didn't have doctorates. They didn't have any of the things that I could walk into that room with and give them as a gift. And then at the same time, I actually also shifted to the point I can't wait to learn from them, because they knew their company, they knew what their team was lacking, so I got to learn, and that's where I came in at.
Nice. The first time someone doubted your expertise.
Wow.
I love that reaction.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It wasn't that they doubted my expertise, they doubted my right to be in a room. So a little bit different. And it was actually in graduate school. Before I was even in grad school, I had worked my butt off in college, thought I had a perfect resume for getting into any grad program I wanted. I did not. Apparently I was missing research that I didn't even realize was a thing then. And so I got turned down from the PhD programs I wanted. I was devastated, and my dad said, okay, pick one. Pick the one you really want, write a letter, tell them why they should take you. And I'm like, that's never going to work. But I did it. And I got a call from the chair of the department who the secretary said, he wants you to come and meet him. I'm like, okay. So my dad and I drove 2 hours to New York, and I went into this room, and it was the worst interview I had ever been on. The chair of the department kept doing work. He didn't even look at me. People would stop in and he'd call them in and talk to them while I was sitting there. And I'm like, what you asked me here? Just nothing. Like barely, like every answer I gave, he gave a disparaging response to. It was horrible, AJ.
Oh
And
my God.
I ran out of that meeting. I mean, I had no clue at that point. He was like, well, I don't really know what to tell you. And I'm like, ugh. Ran out of the meeting, ran right into a division between two doors. I mean, I was moving so fast I didn't even see it. Came out, and my dad saw I had a big bruise on my head. He's like, what did they do to you? And I'm like, yeah. But I felt so diminished. And so
Oh
just,
wow.
oh, it was horrible. Yeah. And then,
That's horrible.
yeah. And then a week later, I got a letter dated that day admitting me to the program, which was crazy. And I said to my dad, I don't even know if I want to go. He's like, Robin, do not let one person stand in your way of what you want. He is one person. I'm like, okay. So, yep, he was fun. He was fun all through grad school, same way. But
Okay. The first time you stood on a big stage and felt total flow.
oh, oh my goodness, yes. Well, TED is definitely one of the bigger stages I've stepped onto, and I did not think that would feel as natural as it did. I mean, obviously, I worked really hard at the talk, but I stepped into that light and on that red circle, and I was like, this is my room. These are my people. I got this. That was crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was powerful, because that talk felt so different than any talk I'd ever given. I'd been on bigger stages, not much. I mean, that was one of the bigger ones, but there was such a gravitas around that talk and that organization. Yeah, to be able to step on that red circle and be like, "Yep, let's go."
The first time a client's story shocked you.
Um, hmm. The female CEO who actually intimidated the heck out of me. I was very nervous to work with her. She had handpicked me from a group. She had interviewed all of us, and when she came into the room, she said two things to me. Well, it was probably our third meeting because she wasn't open right away. But our third meeting, she said, "I'm going to tell you two things, and I can't leave this room." And I said, "Okay." She's like, "First of all, I deal with imposter syndrome every day, and it's almost debilitating. Shocked the hell out of me." And she had stage 3 cancer. And I'm like, what are we doing? Then what are we doing here? And I didn't even know where to start with her because it was like, are we here about your imposter syndrome in business? Are we here for your personal challenge? And when I asked her that question, I said, where are we starting? She's like, oh, no, we're doing both. And I said, okay, we'll do both. She was amazing. She was incredible. I swear I learned way more from her than she did from me, but she was a powerful woman.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. Okay, I had so many more questions, but I want to be respectful of time. Where can people find more information about you?
Sure. So my website's easy, drrobinbuckley, all one word.com. And then I am on a wealth of social media platforms, including Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. So easy enough to find me under the same moniker.
Okay, perfect. And also, guys, make sure to check out her book. I'll be providing the link below.
Yeah, and AJ, I'll provide your audience with a discount code for the book too, if they're so interested.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Final question before we end this. What's one piece of advice you wish everyone absorbed?
For career, for life, for relationships? Which one?
Let's say life.
I wish every person out there would follow the idea that Nelson Mandela had. It's on my wall. It's my favorite quote, and it's, I never lose. I either win or I learn. And life is about learning. If you're not making mistakes, you're not growing. So let your mistakes be just the opportunities to become the person you know you are. That's what I wish everybody. Yeah, that would be it. Thanks for pushing that, because yep, that's it.
That's beautiful. I have enjoyed this conversation so much with you.
Me too, AJ.
Thank you for giving us your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Make sure to check out everything that I link below. She's amazing.